May 14th, 1944. The skies over Normandy. It's cold at 22,000 feet, bone cold. The kind of cold that seeps through leather jackets and settles in your lungs with every breath. The clouds below are scattered, their white peaks stretching toward a horizon painted in shades of gray and pale blue. Somewhere beneath that cotton blanket, France bleeds under occupation. And somewhere up here, above it all, Captain Marcus Bellamy grips the stick of his P-51D Mustang and watches the formation of B-17 bombers lumber through the sky like silver whales. The radio crackles. "Bluegrass Angel, this is Wild Bill. Stay tight on that right flank. Intel says the Krauts are throwing everything at us today." Mark clicks the transmit button once. Acknowledgement without words. Major William Sullivan, call sign Wild Bill, doesn't need conversation. He needs obedience. And Mark, quiet by nature, has learned that silence often speaks louder than bravado. The Mustang hums beneath him, steady and powerful. 6 Browning .50 caliber machine guns loaded, 1,180 rounds total. Fuel tanks topped off with 425 gallons counting the drop tanks. The Bluegrass Angel, painted in script along the fuselage just below the canopy, number 47 stenciled in white on the nose. It's not just a plane, it's home, it's armor. It's the only thing standing between him and a 22,000-foot drop into occupied France. Mark's breath fogs the inside of his oxygen mask. His gloved hands rest lightly on the controls, feeling every vibration, every subtle shift in airspeed and altitude. His father taught him that. Back in Lexington, back when planes were prop jobs flown by barnstormers and dreamers, his father would place Mark's small hands on engine casings and say, "Feel that? That's the heart. You learn to listen to the heart, you'll know when something's wrong before the gauges do." He's listening now, and the Bluegrass Angel's heart is strong. To his right, about 200 yards out, Lieutenant Anthony Romano, flies wing. Tony, loud-mouthed and relentlessly cheerful, the kind of guy who could crack jokes in a hailstorm. Mark envies that sometimes, the ability to laugh when death flies at 400 miles per hour. "Hey, Bellamy," Tony's voice cuts through the static. "Think we'll see any action today? Or is this another milk run?" Mark doesn't answer immediately. He's scanning the sky, eyes sweeping in methodical arcs. High to low, left to right, checking 6 o'clock, 12 o'clock, the glare of sun on canopy glass. It's the ones you don't see that kill you. "No such thing as a milk run over France," he finally replies. Tony laughs, but it's got an edge. They all have edges now. 3 months of escort missions will do that. You watch enough bombers go down in flames, see enough parachutes that never open, you learn that luck is a currency that runs out. The formation drones on, 30 B-17s in a combat box, staggered altitudes, each one bristling with 50 cals in every turret. Flying fortresses, they call them. But Mark knows fortresses fall when you hit them hard enough. The Germans know it too. Then the call comes. "Bandits! Bandits at 2 o'clock high! Count 4! No, 6 contacts!" Mark's heart kicks up. His eyes snap to the designated position, and there they are. Black specks against white clouds, diving fast. Messerschmitt Bf-109s, the backbone of the Luftwaffe, sleek and deadly. "Angel flight, engage at will." Wild Bill's voice is sharp, command absolute. Mark shoves the throttle forward. The Merlin engine roars, 1,490 horsepower surging through the airframe. The Mustang leaps ahead like a predator unleashed. G-forces press him into his seat as he pulls into a climbing turn, angling to intercept. This is it. This is what all the training was for. The hours at the gunnery range, the mock dogfights, the endless drills until muscle memory replaced thought. Now thought is a luxury. Now there's only instinct and reaction, and the thin line between living and dying. The first 109 flashes past, close enough that Mark sees the black crosses on its wings. He banks hard, stick to the left, rudder pedal stomping, and the Mustang responds instantly. The 109 is turning too, trying to get on his tail, but Mark's already adjusting, leading the turn, calculating deflection in milliseconds. His finger hovers over the trigger. Not yet. Not yet. Wait for the shot. His father's voice again, but different now. Not engines. Patience. You don't force it, son. You wait until the moment is right. Then you take it. The moment arrives. The 109 slides into his gun sight. Pipper centered on the fuselage. Mark squeezes the trigger. The The Mustang shudders as all 6 guns fire in unison, a sound like the sky tearing apart. Tracers arc through the air, bright and deadly, and he sees them stitch across the 109's wing route. But there's no explosion. The 109 breaks away, trailing smoke but still flying. Damn. He adjusts, chasing, but another 109 cuts between them and suddenly the sky is chaos. Planes wheeling and diving, tracers crisscrossing, the radio a cacophony of shouts and warnings. On your 6, Romano. I see him. I see him. Brake left. Brake left. Mark's hands are moving on their own now. Stick and throttle and rudder. The Mustang dancing through 3 dimensions, while his eyes track targets and threats in a deadly calculus. His breath comes fast and shallow. Adrenaline sings in his veins. Then the world explodes. The sound is deafening, a metallic crack that reverberates through the airframe. The Mustang lurches violently to the right. Alarms scream. Red lights flash across the instrument panel. Mark's vision blurs as the G-forces slam him sideways. Flak. They've flown into a flak field. Black puffs of smoke blossom around him, 80 by 80mm shells detonating with lethal precision. Another explosion, closer this time, and the Mustang shudders like a wounded animal. Mark fights the controls, but something's wrong. The stick feels loose, sluggish. The hydraulic pressure gauge is dropping fast. Bluegrass Angel is hit, he shouts into the radio. Hydraulics failing. Get out of there, Bellamy. Wild Bill's voice, urgent. But Mark's not done calculating. His eyes sweep the gauges. Hydraulic pressure at 40% and falling. Fuel gauge on the left tank showing 0, the needle bouncing erratically. That's a puncture. He's losing fuel. The flaps indicator is frozen in neutral. The aileron response is delayed, mushy. He rolls the stick experimentally, and the right wing dips slowly, too slowly. This is bad. This is very bad. Bellamy, do you copy? Bail out if you have to. Mark's jaw clenches. Bail out. Parachute into occupied France. Become a prisoner, or worse, a corpse in a ditch. And leave Tony and the bombers without cover. His eyes find the horizon, find the scattered clouds, find the formation of bombers still grinding toward their target. 30 planes. 300 men. His little sister Claire's face flashes in his mind. 9 years old, blonde hair and pigtails, sitting at the kitchen table with crayons and paper, drawing airplanes. Always airplanes. When you come home, Mark, will you teach me to fly? Yeah, kiddo. When I come home. He takes a breath, makes a decision. Negative, Wild Bill. Bluegrass Angel is damaged but flyable. Staying with the formation. There's a pause. Then Wild Bill's voice. Quieter. Copy that, Angel. Good hunting. Mark levels the Mustang as best he can, compensating for the drift, feeling the plane's new rhythm. Damaged, but flyable. That's what he said. Now he has to make it true. And then he sees them. 3 more contacts, coming in low from the south. 2 Focke-Wulf FDU-190s and something else. Something faster. His blood runs cold. A Messerschmitt Me-262. The jet. The killer. The Me-262 doesn't fly. It cuts through the sky like a blade through silk. Impossibly fast. Impossibly smooth. Mark has heard stories about them, whispered in ready rooms and debriefed mission reports. German jet fighters. Twin engines mounted under swept wings. Capable of speeds no piston engine plane could match. 540 miles per hour in level flight. 870 at full throttle. The future of aerial warfare. And it's hunting him now. Mark's hands tighten on the stick. The Mustang is fast. One of the fastest Allied fighters in service. But damaged like this? He's a wounded deer and the wolves are circling. The FW-190s are closer, more immediate threats. They're angling toward the bomber formation, likely planning a coordinated attack. Standard Luftwaffe tactics. Hit hard, hit fast, break away before the escorts can respond. But they haven't accounted for one thing. They haven't accounted for a pilot with nothing left to lose, and everything to prove. Mark banks toward them, ignoring the sluggish response of the ailerons. The hydraulic pressure is down to 30% now. Every control input takes more force, more anticipation. It's like flying through mud, but there's an idea forming in his mind, something born from desperation, and the instinct his father drilled into him. If the plane won't respond normally, then don't fly it normally. The first FW-190 sees him coming and turns to meet him, a classic head-on pass. Whoever flinches first dies. Mark doesn't flinch. He lines up the shot, both planes screaming toward each other at a combined speed of over 700 miles per hour. The distance closes. 1,000 yards, 800, 600. At 400 yards, Mark fires. Short burst, 3 seconds, tracers reaching out. But he's not aiming for the kill. He's aiming to disrupt, to make the German pilot react. It works. The FW-190 breaks left, rolling away from the tracers. And in that moment, Mark does something insane. He pulls the throttle back, cutting power abruptly. The Mustang's speed bleeds off instantly, the sudden drag from the damaged airframe amplifying the deceleration. The German pilot, expecting Mark to maintain speed or accelerate, overshoots by a quarter mile. Now the 190 is in front of him, exposed. Mark shoves the throttle forward again. The Merlin engine responds with a bellow and the Mustang surges. He's behind the 190 now, closing fast, the gun sight tracking the enemy's tail. The German sees him, starts to turn, but it's too late. Mark fires. This time it's not a warning. All 6 guns converge on the 190's fuselage. He sees the impacts, sees metal tearing away, sees the canopy shatter. The 190 shudders, noses down, and begins to fall. Smoke pours from the engine, cowling. 1. There's no time to celebrate. The second 190 is already on him, rolling in from above. Mark yanks the stick back, pulling into a vertical climb, but the damaged hydraulics betray him. The response is delayed, the angle of attack too shallow. The 190 has a firing solution. Cannon rounds streak past his canopy, so close he can see the muzzle flashes. One round hits something behind him, a metallic clang that reverberates through the fuselage. More alarms, more red lights. The fuel gauge on the right tank starts to drop now too. He's hit again. Panic tries to claw its way up his throat. He swallows it down. Fear is a luxury. Fear is for after, if there is an after. The Mustang is shaking now, vibrations running through the airframe like a seizure. The right aileron isn't responding at all anymore. He's losing control authority by the second, but losing control gives him an idea. He stops fighting the plane. Instead, he lets it do what it wants to do. The Mustang starts to roll right, a slow, inexorable rotation. Mark goes with it, adding rudder, letting the damaged plane tumble into what looks like an uncontrolled spin. From the 190 pilot's perspective, it must look like a kill. The Mustang is falling, spinning, finished. Mark can almost feel the German satisfaction, the moment of relaxation as the pilot looks for the next target. Big mistake. At 18,000 feet, Mark kicks left rudder and hauls back on the stick with both hands. The Mustang groans, the airframe protesting, but it responds. The spin stops. The nose comes up. And suddenly, Mark is level again, right underneath the 190 that thought he was dead. The German realizes too late. He's trying to turn, trying to evade, but Mark's already firing. The range is point blank, less than 100 yards. There's no missing. The 190 explodes. Not just smoke and fire, but a genuine detonation. The fuel tank's cooking off in a fireball that Mark has to fly through. His Mustang shudders as debris hammers the fuselage. The smell of burning fuel and cordite fills the cockpit. For a moment he can't see anything but orange flame and black smoke. Then he's through, and the 190 is gone. Just pieces tumbling toward the French countryside below. Mark's breathing hard now, sucking oxygen through the mask, his heart hammering against his ribs. His hands are shaking. The adrenaline is so intense it's almost painful. He checks his six, checks his instruments, checks the sky. The bombers are still flying, still holding formation. Tony Romano is still out there, tangled up with a pair of 109s, and the Me-262 is circling, high and fast, watching, waiting. Mark tries the radio. Wild Bill, Bluegrass Angel, 2 confirmed kills, hydraulics critical, fuel leaking from both tanks. I'm going to have to... Static. The radio crackles and dies. He toggles the switch. Nothing. The hit must have damaged the transmitter. He's alone now. Truly alone. No communication. No coordination. Just him and a dying plane and a sky full of enemies. The Me-262 makes its move. It comes from above, diving with the speed of a meteor, twin cannons blazing. Mark sees the muzzle flashes and reacts on instinct, yanking the stick to the left. The Mustang rolls sluggishly, too slowly, and cannon rounds tear through his right wing. Aluminum shreds like paper. The wingtip disintegrates in a spray of metal fragments. The Mustang drops like a stone. Mark's stomach lurches into his throat as the plane falls, spinning again, this time not by choice. The altimeter unwinds. 17,000 feet, 16,000, 15,000. The ground is spinning below him, a nauseating carousel of green and brown. He fights the controls. Nothing. The hydraulics are completely gone now. He's flying on cables and prayers. He pulls the stick back with both hands, muscles straining. The spin slows. The nose lifts slightly. At 12,000 feet, the Mustang levels out, more or less. But the Me-262 is coming around for another pass. Mark's mind races. He can't outrun it. Can't outmaneuver it. Not like this. The jet is too fast, too advanced. In a fair fight, he's already dead. So he won't fight fair. His eyes drop to the fuel gauge. Both tanks are nearly empty, the needles bouncing erratically in the red. The left tank is venting fuel in a visible stream, vapor trailing behind the wing like a white contrail. That vapor is flammable. That vapor is a trail. An idea forms. Insane. Suicidal. But maybe, just maybe, possible. Mark points the nose toward a bank of cumulus clouds ahead, massive towering formations that reach up to 25,000 feet. The Me-262 is closing fast, 500 yards, and shrinking. He can hear the howl of the jet engines now, a sound like a banshee's scream. 400 yards. Mark enters the clouds. The world turns white and gray, visibility dropping to 0. He's flying blind, trusting instruments that may or may not be accurate anymore. The altimeter, the compass, the artificial horizon, all suspect. All possibly damaged. 300 yards. The Me-262 follows him in. Mark knows because he can still hear the engines, a high-pitched whine that penetrates even through the cloud layer. 200 yards. Mark cuts the throttle, pulls up hard, and rolls inverted. The Mustang flips, hanging upside down in the cloud. His body strains against the harness. Blood rushes to his head. The world is inverted, disorienting, surreal. The Me-262 flashes past beneath him, a gray blur, traveling so fast it overshoots by half a mile before the pilot can react. Mark rolls upright, shoves the throttle forward, and dives. He's behind the jet now. The impossible has happened. A wounded Mustang has gotten on the tail of a Me-262, but the jet pilot knows his plane. He firewalls the throttle, and the Me-262 leaps forward, accelerating with breathtaking speed. In seconds, he's pulled away, opening the distance, disappearing into the clouds ahead. Mark doesn't chase. He can't. His fuel is almost gone. His plane is dying, and he's just accomplished something most pilots would call a miracle. He'll take the small victory. He breaks out of the clouds at 10,000 feet, back into clear air. The bomber formation is ahead, still grinding toward the target. He turns toward them, nursing the throttle, trying to conserve what little fuel remains. Then he sees it. Another BF-109, alone, stalking the formation from below. Mark's jaw sets. 3 would be good. 4 would be better. But he's not thinking about numbers. He's thinking about the men in those bombers, about Tony somewhere up there, about getting home to Claire. He points the nose down and begins his dive. The BF-109 is painted in mottled gray-green camouflage, the colors of a predator evolved for hunting in uncertain skies. It's flying lazy circles about 2,000 feet below the bomber stream, just out of range of the B-17's guns, watching, waiting for an opening. Mark recognizes the tactic. It's what the veterans do, the pilots who've survived long enough to learn patience. They don't rush in. They study the formation, looking for stragglers, wounded birds, gaps in the defensive fire. This pilot has probably been in the war since the beginning. Poland, France, Britain, Russia. This isn't some fresh-faced kid on his first sortie. This is someone who knows how to kill. Mark's Mustang is shaking constantly now, a death rattle vibrating through every rivet and panel. The engine temperature is climbing into the red. Oil pressure is fluctuating. The starboard wing has a hole the size of a dinner plate, and the aileron is hanging by what looks like a single hinge. By all rights, he should be dead already. By all rights, this plane shouldn't be in the air, but it is, and so is he. He comes in from above and behind, using the sun to mask his approach. The 109 doesn't see him at first, focused as it is on the bombers. Mark watches the German plane through the gun sight, calculating. The 109 is turning gently to the left, maintaining its circular patrol pattern. In about 15 seconds, it will be perfectly positioned. Broadside. No deflection angle. A clean shot. If he still had the ammunition. Mark glances at the gun camera footage counter. He's fired over 1,200 rounds already. That leaves maybe 680 rounds remaining across all 6 guns. Less than 15 seconds of continuous fire. He can't afford to waste a single bullet. 10 seconds. The 109 continues its turn, oblivious. Mark's finger rests on the trigger, waiting. His heart is surprisingly calm now, the adrenaline having burned through panic and arrived at something colder, more focused. This is what his training was for. This moment, this shot, 5 seconds. Mark accounts for the bullet drop, the wind, the relative motion. It's all happening in his subconscious now. Muscle memory and mathematics blending into something that transcends thought. He becomes the gun, the plane, the bullet itself. The moment arrives. He fires. Short burst. 1 second, maybe 2. Tracers arc across the sky, bright even in daylight, and converge on the 109's fuselage just behind the cockpit. Mark sees the impacts, sees the pieces flying away, sees the 109 lurch violently to the right. But it's not enough. The 109 doesn't explode, doesn't fall. Instead, it rolls sharply and dives, trailing white smoke but still under control. The pilot knows he's hit, and he's reacting, trying to escape, trying to get away. Mark follows. The Mustang's nose drops, G-forces pressing him into the seat as he enters a steep dive. The airspeed indicator climbs. 300 knots, 350, 400. The whole plane is shaking now, the damaged airframe screaming in protest. Something metallic tears away behind him. A piece of fuselage or control surface. He can't tell. Warning lights are flashing across the panel like a Christmas display from hell. The 109 is diving too, but Mark's plane is heavier, more streamlined even with the damage. He's closing the distance. 800 yards, 600, 400. The German pilot is zigzagging, trying to throw off Mark's aim, but the patterns are predictable. Left, right, left, right. Combat flying 101. Mark anticipates the next jink and fires before the 109 moves. The bullets arrive just as the 109 rolls left, flying directly into the stream of fire. The effect is devastating. The entire left wing shears off, snapped by the concentrated impact. The 109 tumbles, cartwheeling through the sky, pieces flying in all directions. Mark sees the canopy blow off, sees the pilot eject, the parachute blossoming white against the green landscape below. 3. Mark pulls out of the dive at 5,000 feet, the G-forces crushing him into the seat. His vision tunnels, gray encroaching from the edges. For a moment he thinks he's going to black out, but he holds on, straining against the pressure, willing himself to stay conscious. The Mustang levels out, shuddering. The engine is coughing now, misfiring. Black smoke is pouring from the cowling. The oil pressure is dropping toward 0. He's out of time. He tries to climb, tries to rejoin the formation, but the Mustang won't respond. The nose stays low, heavy, uncontrollable. He's lost elevator authority. He's lost damn near everything. The radio in his helmet crackles suddenly, bursting back to life with a squeal of static. Lamy, Bellamy, do you copy? This is Romano. Mark grabs the transmit button. Tony, I copy. Barely. Where are you? Right behind you, you crazy bastard! I saw that last kill. Mark, your plane is on fire. Mark cranes his neck, looking back. Tony's right. Flames are licking up from the engine cowling, orange and hungry, spreading toward the cockpit. The heat is already seeping through the instrument panel. He can smell the burning oil, the melting rubber, the acrid stench of electrical fires. Yeah, I noticed, Mark says, his voice surprisingly steady. Listen, Tony, I'm not going to make it back to the formation. You need to... Bullshit. Tony cuts him off. You're coming back with me. That's an order. You don't give me orders. I do now. Point your nose west and fly, Mark. Just fly. West. Toward England. Toward home. It's 180 kilometers across the channel. Maybe 200 from here. With a plane that's on fire and an engine that's dying. Impossible. But then again, so was everything else today. Mark turns west. The Mustang groans in protest, but it turns Tony pulls alongside, flying formation on Mark's right wing. Through the canopy, Mark can see Tony's face, the oxygen mask obscuring most of his features, but the eyes visible, worried, determined. "Just keep her straight," Tony says over the radio. "We're going home." They fly in silence for a few minutes, 2 Mustangs limping across the French countryside. Below them, the landscape crawls past. Villages, roads, fields, forests. Somewhere down there, people are living under occupation, waiting for liberation. Mark thinks about them briefly, about what it must be like to hear the engines overhead, to see the contrails and the dogfights and the burning plains, and to wonder if help will ever come. Then another voice on the radio, older, commanding. "Bluegrass Angel, this is Wild Bill. We see you, son. Situation?" Mark keys the mic. "Multiple hits, Major. Hydraulics gone. Engine failure imminent. Fuel critical. I've got maybe 10 minutes before this thing decides to be a glider." "Copy that. I'm sending Romano and Phillips to escort you home. The rest of us will continue with the bombers." "Negative, Major. Romano's already here. Send Phillips back to the formation. You need the coverage." There's a pause. Mark can almost see Wild Bill in his cockpit, jaw clenched, making the calculation. Tactical necessity versus loyalty. Numbers versus names. "Understood, Angel. Good luck. We'll have the whiskey waiting." The radio clicks off. Mark smiles despite everything. Wild Bill always did know what to say, but the smile fades as the engine coughs again, harder this time. The propeller stutters, the blades windmilling unevenly. The fire is spreading, creeping back toward the fuel tanks. When it reaches them, the Mustang will become a fireball. "Mark, you need to bail out," Tony says urgently. "Right now, before it blows." Mark looks down. They're still over France, maybe 30 kilometers from the coast. If he bails out here, he'll be captured, interrogated, imprisoned, or shot. "Not yet," he says. "Mark, not yet." He pushes the dying engine, coaxing every last bit of power from the failing Merlin. The propeller catches, spins, drives them forward. The coastline appears on the horizon, a thin line of brown separating the green land from the blue sea. So close, so impossibly far. The Mustang lurches as something inside the engine lets go. A connecting rod, maybe, or a crankshaft bearing. The sound is catastrophic, a metallic shriek that overwhelms the radio. The propeller stops completely, frozen at an odd angle. The plane immediately begins to descend, gliding now, nothing but wind and lift keeping it aloft. Mark's altitude is 3,000 feet. Airspeed is 200 knots and bleeding off. The coastline is still 5 kilometers away. He's not going to make it. "Tony," Mark says quietly, "it's been an honor." "Don't you dare!" Tony snaps back. "Don't you fucking dare give up on me. You keep that nose up. You keep flying." Mark pulls back on the stick. The Mustang's nose rises slightly, trading speed for distance, extracting every possible meter from the glide. The fire is in the cockpit now, flames licking at his boots, heat radiating through the floorboards. Smoke fills the canopy, stinging his eyes. 2,000 feet, 3 kilometers to the coast. The Mustang is vibrating so hard Mark's vision blurs. His hands ache from gripping the stick. His lungs are burning from the smoke. He wants to cough, to gag, but he doesn't. He holds on. 1,500 feet, 2 kilometers. He can see individual waves now, white caps on the channel waters. He can see the beach, the cliffs. Freedom is right there, tantalizingly close. 1,000 feet, 1 kilometer. The flames are everywhere now, consuming the cockpit, melting the instrument panel. Mark's gloves are smoking. He's going to die here, so close to safety, burned alive in a falling plane. 500 feet. The coastline passes beneath him. He's over the channel, over water, over Allied territory. "Now, Mark!" Tony screams. "Bail out now!" Mark reaches for the canopy release, but the mechanism is melted, fused shut. He slams his fist against it. Nothing. He's trapped. Pure instinct takes over. He drops his shoulder and drives it into the canopy glass. Pain explodes through his arm, but the canopy cracks. He hits it again. Again. On the third impact, it shatters. Fragments of plexiglass flying away in the slipstream. Cold air rushes in, stoking the flames into an inferno. Mark unbuckles, grabs the canopy frame, and pulls himself up against the 200-knot wind. The Mustang is at 200 feet now, still gliding, nose high, seconds from hitting the water. He jumps. The wind hits him like a physical blow, tearing him away from the burning Mustang and tumbling him through the air. For a moment, there's no up or down, no sky or sea, just chaotic spinning and the roar of wind, and the smell of burning fuel. His hands scramble for the ripcord, fingers numb and clumsy from the cold and the burns. He finds it, pulls hard. The parachute deploys with a crack that feels like his spine separating. The harness jerks violently, arresting his fall, and suddenly, everything slows. The world stops spinning. He's hanging in the air, swaying gently beneath a canopy of white silk, and below him the bluegrass angel cartwheels into the channel in a spray of white water and black smoke. It disappears beneath the waves in seconds. 3 years of missions, 52 combat sorties, 19 confirmed kills before today. All gone. Just bubbles and oil on the surface now. Mark watches it sink and feels something in his chest tighten. That plane saved his life more times than he can count. It brought him home when nothing else could, and now it's gone. He hits the water hard. The cold is shocking, paralyzing, driving the air from his lungs. The parachute collapses over him, silk and shroud lines tangling, dragging him down. He fights his way up, gasping, breaking the surface just as a wave crashes over his head. Salt water burns his throat. His boots are filling with water, dragging him down. He fumbles with the parachute harness, trying to release it, but his fingers won't cooperate. They're burned, blistered, useless. He's going to drown. After everything, after 5 kills, and a dying plane and a jump at 200 feet, he's going to drown in the English Channel, a mile from safety. Then he hears the engine, a low rumble, getting closer. He turns his head, blinking water from his eyes, and sees it, a British rescue boat, one of the RAF's air-sea rescue launches, cutting through the waves toward him. Men in yellow life vests are shouting, throwing lines. One of them dives in, swimming toward Mark with powerful strokes. Strong hands grab his flight jacket, pull him up, keep his head above water. The parachute is cut away. He's dragged to the boat, hauled over the side like a netted fish, and deposited on the deck in a heap of soaked leather and burned flesh. "You're all right, mate," someone says in a thick British accent. "You're safe now. Just breathe." Mark tries to answer, but all that comes out is a cough, water, and bile spilling onto the deck. His whole body is shaking, tremors he can't control. Shock, probably. Adrenaline crash. Hypothermia starting to set in. Someone wraps a blanket around him. Someone else is checking his hands, muttering about burns and field dressing. Mark barely registers any of it. He's staring up at the sky, watching Tony's Mustang circle overhead, watching the fighter dip its wings once in salute before turning east, back toward the formation, back toward the fight. "Good flying, Tony," Mark whispers. Then the world fades to gray, and he lets it. When he wakes, he's in a hospital bed. White walls, white sheets, the smell of antiseptic and starch. His hands are bandaged, thick wrappings that make them look like mittens. There's an IV in his arm, fluids dripping steadily. His chest aches, his head pounds, but he's alive. A nurse notices he's awake and smiles. "Welcome back, Captain. You gave us quite a scare." "Where am I?" "RAF Debden. You've been here for 18 hours. 18 hours. Mark tries to sit up, but the nurse gently pushes him back down. "Easy now. You've got second-degree burns on your hands and feet, smoke inhalation, and a mild concussion. You're not going anywhere for a few days." "The mission," Mark says hoarsely. "The bombers. Did they made it," a new voice says. Mark turns his head and sees Major William Sullivan standing in the doorway, cap in hand, face grave. 28 out of 30 bombers returned. The target was destroyed. The escorts did their job. Wild Bill walks to the bedside, pulls up a chair, and sits. He's quiet for a long moment, just studying Mark with those hard Texas eyes. "You're either the bravest pilot I've ever seen," he finally says, "or the craziest. I haven't decided which." Mark manages a weak smile. "Can it be both?" Wild Bill doesn't smile back. "I heard the after-action reports. 5 confirmed kills, 3 BF-109s, 2 FW-190s, and..." He pauses, shakes his head. "And you engaged a Me-262, with a damaged plane." "Engaged is a strong word. More like I survived it. You're being modest. The bomber crews saw the whole thing. They're calling it the impossible sortie, a flying miracle. Wild Bill leans forward. I need you to tell me exactly what happened up there. Start from the moment you took the first hit. So Mark tells him. Everything. The flak burst, the hydraulic failure, the fuel leaks, the decision to stay with the formation instead of heading home. The first FW-190, how he used the damaged plane's drag to execute a speed trap. The second 190, the fake spin, the 109 below the bombers. And finally, the Me-262, the cloud, the inverted roll. Wild Bill listens without interrupting, his expression unreadable. When Mark finishes, the Major is quiet for a long time. You realize what you did was insane, he finally says. Yes, sir. You should have bailed out the moment the hydraulics failed. Yes, sir. You disobeyed direct orders to return to base. Yes, sir. Wild Bill stands, puts his cap back on, and looks down at Mark with something that might be respect, might be anger, might be both. I'm putting you up for a distinguished flying cross, he says, and I'm grounding you for 2 weeks. When you're cleared for duty, you'll report for a full tactical debriefing. The brass wants to know how you pulled off those kills with a damaged bird. They think there might be something to learn from it. He turns to leave, then stops at the door. One more thing, Bellamy. Your wingman, Romano. He says you saved his life twice out there. Says he'd fly with you anytime, anywhere. Wild Bill's expression softens slightly. That's high praise. Don't waste it. I won't, sir. When Wild Bill is gone, Mark closes his eyes. The adrenaline is long gone now, replaced by bone-deep exhaustion and pain. But beneath it all, there's something else. A quiet voice in the back of his mind, asking questions he doesn't want to answer. How many men did you kill today? 5 planes. 5 pilots. Maybe some of them ejected. Maybe some of them survived. But probably not. Probably they burned or drowned or died on impact. 5 men who woke up this morning, ate breakfast, kissed their wives or mothers or lovers goodbye, and climbed into their planes thinking they'd see another sunset. They didn't, because of him. Mark knows it was war, knows it was necessary, knows that if he hadn't killed them, they would have killed the bomber crews, killed Tony, killed him. It was righteous. It was justified. So why does he feel like he's drowning again? He opens his eyes, stares at the white ceiling, and tries not to think about the faces he'll never see, the names he'll never know. But they're there, ghosts at the edge of his vision, and he knows they'll stay there for a long time, maybe forever. The next 2 days pass in a haze of morphine and sleep. He dreams, vivid and chaotic, dreams of falling, of fire, of planes spinning out of control, dreams of Claire, standing in a field of sunflowers, asking him why he's late, dreams of the Me-262, that silver ghost, circling overhead like a shark. On the 3rd day, Tony Romano visits. He brings contraband whiskey and a grin that doesn't quite reach his eyes. You look like hell, Mark. You should see the other guy. Tony laughs, but it's hollow. He pours 2 fingers of whiskey into a paper cup, hands it to Mark. Finally, Tony speaks. They're calling you the ghost of Normandy, he says quietly. The bomber crews. They saw you in that cloud bank with the 262. Saw you disappear. Saw the jet chase you in. Then saw you come out alone with the jet going down in flames. Mark shakes his head. The 262 didn't go down. It got away. That's not what they're saying. They swear they saw smoke, saw it losing altitude. Tony pauses. 5 kills, Mark. 5 confirmed, with a plane that was falling apart. Do you understand what that means? It means I got lucky. No. Tony's voice is sharp now. Luck doesn't shoot down 5 enemy aircraft. Luck doesn't fly 180 kilometers on a dying engine. Luck doesn't survive a bailout at 200 feet. He leans forward. What you did up there wasn't luck. It was something else. Something I've never seen before. Mark looks down at his bandaged hands. They're shaking slightly, a tremor he can't control. It started yesterday, subtle at first, but now it's constant. The nurse says it's normal, says it's the body processing trauma. But Mark knows better. It's not trauma. It's memory. His hands remember the stick, the trigger, the vibration of guns firing. They remember killing. Tony, he says quietly, I need you to do something for me. Anything. Find out their names. Tony blinks. Whose names? The pilots. The German pilots I shot down. I need to know who they were. The room goes very quiet. Tony sets down his cup, his expression unreadable. Why would you want to know that? Because they were someone's son, Mark says. Someone's brother, husband, father. They had names. They had lives. And I took that away from them. He meets Tony's eyes. I need to know who they were. Tony is quiet for a long moment. Then he nods slowly. Okay, I'll see what I can find out. But Mark, they would have killed you. They would have killed all of us. You know that, right? I know. Doesn't make it easier. Tony leaves an hour later, promising to return tomorrow. When he's gone, Mark lies back and stares at the ceiling, listening to the sounds of the base outside. Engines starting, men shouting, the distant rumble of bombers taking off for another mission. The war continues, indifferent to his survival, indifferent to his doubts. 3 days later, Colonel Harrison arrives. He's a tall man with silver hair and a face carved from granite, the kind of officer who learned to fly in biplanes and never quite adjusted to the modern world. He pulls a chair to Mark's bedside and sits without invitation. Captain Bellamy, he says, I've reviewed your after-action report. I've also reviewed the reports from Major Sullivan, Lieutenant Romano, and the bomber crews. He pauses. They don't match. Mark's stomach tightens. Sir, your report is modest to the point of dishonesty. You claim 3 confirmed kills and describe your actions as defensive maneuvering under duress. The other reports describe something quite different. They describe offensive engagement with multiple hostiles while operating a critically damaged aircraft. They describe tactical innovation under extreme conditions. Harrison leans back. So which is it, Captain? Were you defending yourself, or were you hunting? The question hangs in the air like smoke. Mark considers lying, considers deflecting, but something in Harrison's eyes tells him that won't work. Both, sir, he finally says. I was trying to survive, but I was also trying to protect the formation. The two objectives overlapped. Harrison's expression doesn't change. That's one way to put it. He pulls a folder from his briefcase and opens it. I have intelligence reports here from the Luftwaffe, intercepted radio transmissions from that day. Would you like to know what they said? Mark doesn't answer. Harrison reads aloud. Achtung! Mustang at 6 o'clock, firing. He's hit but still fighting. Pull up, pull up. He looks up. That's from the 2nd FW-190 you engaged, the one you lured into a false spin. He flips a page. Here's another. The American is insane. He's flying a wreck and he's outmaneuvering us. Break off. Break off. Harrison closes the folder. The German pilots were terrified of you, Captain. They couldn't understand how a damaged plane was beating them. Some of them thought you were multiple aircraft. Others thought you were some kind of experimental prototype. Mark feels something twist in his chest. Pride, maybe. Or shame. He's not sure which. What I did, he says slowly, wasn't heroism. It was desperation. I couldn't run, so I had to fight. I couldn't fly normally, so I had to improvise. None of it was planned. None of it was tactical genius. I was just adapting. Adapting, Harrison repeats. He stands, walks to the window, looks out at the flight line. Do you know what separates good pilots from great ones, Captain? No, sir. Good pilots follow doctrine. They do what they're trained to do. Execute maneuvers by the book. Rely on superior equipment and numbers to win. He turns back. Great pilots rewrite the book when the book stops working. They see limitations as opportunities. They turn disadvantages into weapons. His eyes bore into Mark. You took a crippled plane and made it more dangerous than a healthy one. You used your damage as camouflage, as bait, as leverage. That's not desperation, Captain. That's genius. Mark shakes his head. It was luck. Then explain to me how luck shot down 5 aircraft. I don't know, sir. I saw the openings and I took them. Harrison walks back to the bedside, his expression softening slightly. Captain, I didn't come here to praise you. I came here to understand you, because the tactics you employed, this compensatory flying, as the analysts are calling it, could change how we train pilots. If a damaged aircraft can be used offensively, if limitations can be transformed into advantages, then we need to teach that. We need to systematize it. You can't systematize desperation, sir. Maybe not, but we can teach adaptability. We can teach pilots to think instead of just react. Harrison picks up his cap. You're being awarded the Distinguished Flying Cross, Captain. You'll also be given a 2-week medical leave, effective immediately. After that, you'll report to Flight Training Command as a tactical instructor. You're going to teach other pilots what you did up there. Sir, I don't think I can. That wasn't a request, Captain. That was an order. Harrison's voice is firm but not unkind. You survived something impossible. Now you're going to make sure others can do the same. He puts on his cap, salutes. Dismissed. When Harrison is gone, Mark closes his eyes and tries to imagine himself as a teacher, tries to imagine standing in front of a classroom and explaining what he did. But all he sees is fire. All he hears is the sound of cannons and the screaming of engines and the wet, horrible thud of bullets hitting flesh. He can't teach this. He can't put it into words, because words require logic, and what he did had no logic. It was instinct and terror and a refusal to die. You can't teach that. You can only survive it. That night he writes his first letter, not to Claire, not to his parents, to the family of the first pilot he killed, the BF-109 over Caen. He doesn't have a name yet. Tony is still working on that. So he addresses it to the family of the unknown Luftwaffe pilot. He writes slowly, his bandaged hands making every word a struggle. I don't know who your son was. I don't know his name, his age, or what he dreamed about. But I know he was brave. He flew straight and true. And when the moment came, he didn't hesitate. I want you to know that his death was quick. I want you to know that he fought with honor. And I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I had to be the one who brought him down. I'm sorry that you'll never see him again. I'm sorry that this war took him from you. If there is any comfort to be found, please know that he didn't die in vain. He died protecting his homeland, protecting his comrades, protecting the things he believed in. That has to mean something. It has to. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect understanding. I just wanted you to know that someone remembers. Someone knows that he was more than a target. More than an enemy, he was a person, and his life mattered. Respectfully, Captain Marcus Bellamy. He folds the letter carefully and puts it in his bedside drawer. He'll write 4 more over the next week, 1 for each pilot. He'll never send them. He'll never even address them properly. But writing them helps, somehow. It makes the ghosts a little less loud. 2 weeks later, Mark is released from the hospital. His hands have healed, the burns fading to pink scars that will eventually turn white. The tremors have lessened but not disappeared. The nightmares continue. Every night, he dreams of falling, of burning, of drowning. Every morning, he wakes up gasping, sheets soaked with sweat, convinced he's still in the cockpit of a dying plane. Tony takes him to see the wreckage of the Bluegrass Angel. It's been recovered from the channel and brought back to Debden for analysis. What's left of it, anyway. The salvage crew laid the pieces out on the tarmac like a jigsaw puzzle made of twisted metal and burned dreams. Mark walks among the debris, his footsteps echoing. The fuselage is split open, the cockpit completely burned away. The wings are separate, one shredded by cannon fire, the other torn off when it hit the water. The engine is a blackened lump of metal, unrecognizable. A maintenance chief, a grizzled sergeant named Murphy, walks over. "Never seen anything like it, sir," he says, shaking his head. This bird took hits in 17 different places. Hydraulic lines severed, fuel tanks punctured, control surfaces damaged, engine mounts cracked. Any one of these hits should have brought you down. All of them together? He laughs, a sound without humor. You shouldn't be standing here, Captain. Nobody should have walked away from this. Mark kneels next to what used to be the cockpit and runs his hand over the charred metal. He can still smell the burning oil, still feel the heat. Somewhere in this wreckage is the photo of Claire, melted and ruined. Somewhere in here is every mission he flew, every life he saved, every moment he thought he was going to die and didn't. She was a good plane, he says quietly. She was a miracle, Murphy corrects. And so are you. But Mark doesn't feel like a miracle. He feels like a man who borrowed time he shouldn't have had, and now doesn't know how to pay it back. The orders come through 3 weeks after Mark leaves the hospital. He's to report to Flight Training Command at Eglin Field, Florida. Not as a student, as an instructor. The idea sits in his stomach like lead. How can he teach what he doesn't understand himself? The flight back to the States is long and quiet. Mark sits in the navigator's seat of a C-47 transport, watching the Atlantic slide by below, endless and gray. He thinks about the last time he crossed this water, in the cockpit of the Bluegrass Angel, fuel leaking, engine dying, fire eating the fuselage. He remembers the cold shock of hitting the channel, the parachute dragging him down, the certainty that he was going to drown. He wonders if he'll ever cross water again without feeling that fear. When the C-47 lands in Florida, The heat hits him like a physical force. It's June now, summer in full bloom, and the tarmac shimmers with waves of heat. Mark steps out into the bright sunlight and has to shield his eyes. After months in England, months of gray skies and rain and fog, the sun feels alien. Wrong. A jeep is waiting to take him to the base commander's office. The driver, a fresh-faced corporal who can't be more than 19, keeps sneaking glances at Mark's chest, at the ribbons there. The distinguished flying cross sits above the others, bright and new. Mark wants to rip it off, wants to tell the kid that medals don't mean what he thinks they mean. They're not badges of honor. They're receipts, proof of payment for things you can never get back. The base commander, Colonel Pritchard, is a career officer with a handshake like a vice and a smile that doesn't reach his eyes. He welcomes Mark to Eglin, talks about the importance of training the next generation of pilots, about how Mark's experience will be invaluable to the war effort. "We're setting up a new program," Pritchard says, leaning back in his chair. "Emergency tactical response training, teaching pilots how to adapt when things go wrong. Equipment failures, combat damage, unexpected enemy tactics. We want them to be able to think on their feet, improvise, survive." He taps a file on his desk. "Your file says you're an expert in that area." Mark shifts uncomfortably. "I'm not an expert, sir. I just got lucky. 5 kills with a damaged aircraft isn't luck, Captain. It's skill." Pritchard opens the file. "I have the intelligence analysis here. The Luftwaffe pilots you engaged were experienced. 2 of them had over 20 kills each. 1 was a flight instructor. These weren't rookies, Captain. They were hunters. And you beat them. I survived them, sir. There's a difference." Pritchard closes the file and looks at Mark with an expression that might be sympathy. "Captain, I'm going to tell you something I learned a long time ago. In war, surviving and winning are the same thing. The pilot who comes home is the pilot who won. Everything else is just philosophy." He stands. "You start Monday. You'll have a class of 36 cadets, all of them advanced students within 2 months of deployment. Your job is to make sure they survive their first combat mission. How you do that is up to you." Mark salutes and leaves. In the hallway outside, he leans against the wall and closes his eyes. 36 students. 36 lives depending on what he teaches them. The weight of it is crushing. That night, he calls home. His mother answers, her voice bright with joy and relief. She cries when she hears his voice, tells him she's been praying every day, tells him Claire hasn't stopped talking about him since they got the telegram saying he was alive. "She wants to talk to you," his mother says. "Hold on." There's a shuffling sound. Then Claire's voice, high and excited. Mark, is it really you?" "Yeah, kiddo. It's really me. Mom said you're a hero. She said you shot down 5 planes and saved a bunch of people and you had to jump out of your plane into the ocean." Mark swallows hard. "I did what I had to do, Claire. That's all." "Are you coming home? When are you coming home?" "I'm in Florida right now. I'm going to be teaching for a while, but I'll get leave soon. I'll come see you. I promise. Will you teach me to fly when you come home? You promised, remember?" He remembers. He remembers her at the kitchen table with her crayons and paper, drawing airplanes with impossible wings and smiling pilots. He remembers thinking war was something noble, something necessary. He remembers being that naive. "Yeah, kiddo," he says quietly. "When I come home, I'll teach you to fly." They talk for a few more minutes, Claire chattering about school and friends and a new painting she's working on. Mark listens, lets her voice wash over him like clean water, and for a few minutes he almost feels normal again. When he hangs up, the silence rushes back in. He sits in his quarters, a small room with a bed and a desk and a window looking out at the flight line, and pulls out the letters. The 5 letters he wrote in the hospital, 1 for each pilot he killed. He's added names now. Tony managed to get intelligence reports, managed to find out who they were. Oberleutnant Friedrich Hauser, 24 years old, 32 kills. The first BF 109. Feldwebel Kurt Schreiber, 29 years old, 19 kills. The first FW 190. Lieutenant Hans Vogel, 22 years old, 8 kills. The second, BF 109. Hauptmann Werner Dietrich, 31 years old, 47 kills, flight instructor. The second FW 190, the one who dueled with Mark for 8 minutes. And the Me-262 pilot. No name, no information. Just unknown, presumed dead. Mark reads the letters one by one. These letters he'll never send. He's written to the families, told them their sons were brave, told them their deaths were quick. Lies, mostly. He doesn't know if they were brave. He doesn't know if they died quickly. He just knows they're dead and he's alive, and the unfairness of it threatens to choke him. He folds the letters carefully and puts them back in the drawer. Then he pulls out a notebook and starts to write. Not letters. Lesson plans. Lesson 1. When your aircraft is damaged, your first instinct will be to panic. Don't. Take 3 seconds to assess the damage, 3 seconds to consider your options, 3 seconds to make a decision. 9 seconds total. In those 9 seconds, you can save your life. Lesson 2. Doctrine exists for a reason, but doctrine assumes ideal conditions. War is never ideal. Learn the rules so well that you know exactly when to break them. Lesson 3. Your limitations can become your weapons. A damaged plane flies differently, behaves unpredictably. Use that. Make the enemy think you're doing one thing when you're really doing another. He writes for hours, filling page after page with everything he learned in those terrible minutes over Normandy. He writes about using drag as a brake, about false spins and inverted rolls, about reading the enemy's patterns and exploiting their assumptions. He writes about fear and how to breathe through it, about the moment between seeing a target and pulling the trigger, about coming home when everything says you should be dead. When he's finished, the sun is coming up. Mark looks out the window at the flight line, at the rows of training aircraft gleaming in the early light, and he thinks about the 36 students he'll meet on Monday. 36 young men who think they know what war is. 36 faces that will look to him for answers he's not sure he has. But he'll try. God help him. He'll try. Monday comes too fast. Mark stands in front of the classroom, 36 pairs of eyes watching him, and for a moment, he can't speak, can't breathe. Then he sees one kid in the front row, baby-faced and eager, and he looks exactly like Claire. Same blonde hair, same bright eyes, same excitement. Mark clears his throat. "My name is Captain Marcus Bellamy," he says. 6 weeks ago, I flew a combat mission over Normandy. My aircraft was hit by flak and severely damaged. I had no hydraulics, no radio, fuel leaking from both tanks, and half my control surfaces were inoperative. According to doctrine, I should have bailed out immediately. He pauses, lets that sink in. Instead, I stayed with the formation and engaged 5 enemy aircraft. I shot down all 5. Then I flew 180 kilometers back to England, bailed out over the channel, and was rescued. He looks at each of them in turn. I'm not telling you this to impress you. I'm telling you this because every single one of you will face a moment like that. A moment where your plane is damaged, where the situation is impossible, where every instinct tells you to give up. And in that moment, you'll have a choice. The room is silent. This course is going to teach you how to make the right choice, how to turn damage into advantage, how to survive when survival seems impossible. He picks up a piece of chalk. We're going to start with the basics. How to assess damage in combat, how to compensate for failed systems, how to think 3 moves ahead when you can barely think 1 move ahead. He turns to the blackboard and starts to write. Behind him, he can hear the students shifting, can feel their attention focusing. And for the first time since he jumped out of the burning Mustang, Mark feels like maybe, just maybe, he has a purpose again. The weeks blur together. Mark teaches, drills, lectures. He takes students up in damaged aircraft, planes deliberately sabotaged to simulate combat conditions, and watches them panic, watches them adapt, watches them learn. Some of them are naturals, others struggle. A few wash out completely, unable to handle the pressure, but most of them get it. Most of them start to understand that flying isn't about perfection. It's about adaptation. It's about staying calm when everything is falling apart and finding the one move, the one angle, the one advantage that keeps you alive. One student in particular stands out. Lieutenant James Keller, a quiet kid from Montana with steady hands and sharper eyes. He reminds Mark of himself, the way he thinks through problems, the way he calculates angles and distances without thinking about it. After a training flight where Keller successfully landed a plane with simulated hydraulic failure, Mark pulls him aside. That was good work up there. Mark says. Keller nods. Thank you, sir. I just tried to remember what you said. 3 seconds to assess, 3 seconds to plan, 3 seconds to act. You did more than remember. You applied it. That's different. Mark hesitates. Can I ask you something? Of course, sir. Why are you here? Why do you want to be a fighter pilot? Keller thinks about it for a moment. My brother was a pilot, sir. B-17 co-pilot. He was shot down over Germany last year. They never found him. He looks up. I guess I want to make sure other people's brothers come home. Mark feels something twist in his chest. That's a good reason, he says quietly. Maybe the best reason. That night, Mark pulls out the letters again. 5 letters, 5 names. He reads them one more time, then makes a decision. He finds envelopes, addresses them as best he can using the intelligence reports, and the next morning he mails them. He doesn't know if they'll reach the families, doesn't know if they'll be read or burned or thrown away, but he sent them. He told the truth, or as much of it as he could bear to tell, and maybe that's enough. The war ends in August 1945. Mark hears the news over the radio in the instructor's lounge at Eglin, surrounded by other pilots and trainers who cheer and embrace and cry with relief. It's over. After 4 years of blood and fire and death, it's finally over. Mark doesn't cheer. He sits quietly in the corner, a cup of cold coffee in his hands, and thinks about all the faces he'll never see again. The pilots he trained who didn't come back. The students who graduated his course, flew to Europe or the Pacific, and died before they could use what he taught them. He thinks about Friedrich Hauser and Kurt Schreiber, and Hans Vogel and Werner Dietrich, names on letters he sent to families he'll never meet. Tony Romano finds him there an hour later, when the celebrations have died down and the lounge is empty except for the 2 of them. You okay? Tony asks, sitting down beside him. Mark nods slowly. Yeah, just thinking. About what? About what comes next. Tony is quiet for a moment. He's been flying combat missions in the Pacific, escorting B-29s over Japan, and he looks older now. Tired. Changed. They all are. What does come next? Tony finally asks. Mark looks at his hands, at the scars from the burns that have faded to thin white lines. I don't know. I thought I'd feel different when it ended. Relieved, maybe. Happy. But I just feel empty. That's normal, Tony says quietly. We spent years learning how to kill. Now we have to learn how to live. That's harder. Mark smiles without humor. When did you get so wise? When I watched you jump out of a burning plane and survive. Made me rethink my priorities. Tony stands, claps Mark on the shoulder. Come on, let's get drunk. We've earned it. They do get drunk that night, along with half the base. They toast the dead and the living, the lost and the found. And for a few hours, Mark lets himself forget. Lets himself be just another pilot celebrating the end of a war. But when the alcohol wears off and the sun rises, the emptiness is still there. Mark stays at Eglin for another 6 months, finishing out his contract. He trains 2 more classes, watches them graduate, watches them prepare for deployments that will never come. The military is demobilizing, shrinking back to peacetime size. Pilots are being discharged by the thousands, sent home to resume the lives they left behind. In February 1946, Mark gets his discharge papers. He's offered a promotion, a permanent position as a training officer. He declines. He needs to go home. He needs to see Claire, needs to see if the person he used to be is still waiting somewhere in Kentucky. The train ride back to Lexington is long and quiet. Mark watches the country slide past outside the window, farmland and small towns and cities rebuilding themselves. It looks the same, but he knows it's not. Nothing is the same. Nothing ever will be. His father meets him at the station, older than Mark remembers, grayer. They shake hands, then embrace, and Mark feels something in his chest finally crack open. His father doesn't say much on the drive home, just asks simple questions about the trip, the weather, nothing important. But it's enough. It's normal. And normal is what Mark needs. Claire is waiting on the porch when they pull up, 15 now, no longer the little girl he left behind. She runs to him before he's out of the car, throws her arms around him, and starts crying. Mark holds her and realizes he's crying too, for the first time since before the war. You came home, she whispers. I promised, didn't I? That night, at dinner with his family, Mark tries to talk about the war, tries to explain what he did, what he saw, what it changed in him. but the words won't come. How do you explain burning planes and dying men and the weight of 5 lives taken? How do you put that into words over mashed potatoes and roast chicken? So he doesn't. He talks about England and the rain and Tony Romano's terrible jokes. He talks about teaching and the students who reminded him why he kept flying. He talks about everything except the truth, but Claire sees through it. Later, when their parents have gone to bed, she finds him on the porch, staring up at the stars. "You're different," she says, sitting beside him. "Yeah. Does it hurt?" Mark considers the question. "Sometimes. Not like physical hurt, more like a weight. Something I'll carry forever." Claire is quiet for a long moment. Then she says, "I've been painting pictures of you, of your plane, of the things Mom told me you did." She looks at him. "I want to understand. I want to know what you went through. Claire, not the details, not the blood and fire, just what it felt like to be that brave." Mark shakes his head. "I wasn't brave. I was scared every single second. But you did it anyway. That's what brave means." Mark looks at his sister, at this girl becoming a woman, and realizes she's right. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's flying anyway, fighting anyway, living anyway. "You want to understand?" he says. "Then I'll teach you to fly, like I promised." So he does. Over the next year, Mark uses his savings to buy an old Piper Cub, a tiny 2-seater trainer that's seen better days. He repairs it with his father, the two of them working side by side in the barn, just like they used to with tractors. And when it's ready, he takes Claire up. She's terrified at first, gripping the sides of the cockpit so hard her knuckles turn white. But Mark talks her through it, calm and steady, until she relaxes, until she feels what he feels when the ground drops away, and there's nothing but sky and wind and possibility. "This is incredible," she breathes. "This," Mark says, "is freedom." Claire becomes an excellent pilot. She has the instincts, the hands, the mind for it, but she never pursues it professionally. Instead, she goes to art school, becomes a painter. Her subjects are always the same: planes and pilots in the sky. She creates a series of paintings based on Mark's stories, abstract and powerful, depicting the moment between fear and action, between falling and flying. Mark, meanwhile, opens a small flight school in Lexington. He teaches civilians, people who want to fly for pleasure or business. He never talks about the war, never mentions the 5 kills or the distinguished flying cross that sits in a drawer somewhere. He just teaches patience and precision, and the importance of staying calm when everything goes wrong. Word spreads. Veterans hear about the quiet instructor who survived the impossible, and they seek him out. Some want to learn to fly. Others just want to talk, to be around someone who understands. Mark gives them what he can: time, attention, the knowledge that they're not alone. The years pass. The tremors in Mark's hands fade, but never completely disappear. The nightmares come less frequently, but never stop entirely. He marries a woman named Helen, a librarian with gentle eyes who doesn't ask about the war. They have 2 children, both daughters. Neither of them becomes a pilot. In 1963, Mark gets a letter from Germany. It's from a woman named Greta Dietrich, widow of Hauptmann Werner Dietrich, the FW-190 pilot Mark killed over Normandy. She writes that she received his letter, the one he sent 17 years ago, and that it brought her both pain and peace. She thanks him for writing. She tells him about Werner, about the man he was before the war, an engineer, a father, a good man who believed he was fighting for his country. She ends the letter with a question. Do you think they would have been friends in another world? Our husbands, had they met under different circumstances? Mark reads the letter 3 times, then writes back. Yes, he says, I think they would have been. They correspond for years after that. These 2 people connected by violence but bound by grief. Greta sends him photos of Werner, of his children, of the life he lived before he climbed into that FU-190 and never came home. Mark sends her photos of his family, of the flight school, of Claire's paintings, and slowly, letter by letter, they both find something close to forgiveness. In 1985, Mark is invited to speak at a symposium on tactical aviation. He's in his 60s now, gray-haired and weathered, but his eyes are still sharp. The organizers want him to talk about compensatory flying, about the tactics he pioneered that day over Normandy. The tactics that were studied quietly, informally, by test pilots and instructors who recognize their value. Mark almost declines, but Claire convinces him. "Tell them," she says. "Not for you, for all the pilots who came after." So he goes. He stands in front of a room full of military historians and aviation experts and tells the story. Not the sanitized version, not the heroic narrative. The truth, the fear, the desperation, the moments when he thought he was dead. The calculations he made not to be a hero but to survive. The faces of the men he killed that still visit him in dreams. When he finishes, the room is silent. Then someone starts clapping, and others join, until the whole auditorium is standing, applauding. But Mark doesn't feel triumphant. He feels tired. He's told the story, carried it out of himself and placed it in the world. And now, maybe he can let some of it go. He retires from teaching in 1990, at the age of 70. He spends his final years quietly, tending a small garden, reading, watching his grandchildren grow. Claire visits often, sometimes bringing her paintings to show him. One of them depicts a single P-51 Mustang, damaged and burning, climbing toward a shaft of golden light breaking through storm clouds. She titles it, "The Impossible Flight." "Is that how you remember it?" she asks. Mark studies the painting for a long time. "No," he finally says. "I remember the cold, the fear, the certainty that I wouldn't make it." He pauses. "But that's how I want to remember it, as something beautiful, something worth surviving for." In the spring of 1998, Mark's health begins to fail. Cancer, the doctors say. Too many years breathing engine exhaust and smoke. He's 78, and he's tired. When he closes his eyes, he doesn't see burning planes anymore. He sees Claire as a little girl, drawing airplanes at the kitchen table. He sees Helen on their wedding day. He sees Tony Romano laughing in the cockpit. He sees the fields of Kentucky stretching green and endless under a clear blue sky. On a warm May afternoon, surrounded by his family, Mark takes his last breath. Claire is holding his hand, and his last words are barely a whisper. "I kept my promise, kiddo. I came home." At his funeral, Tony Romano, now in his late 70s himself, gives the eulogy. He talks about bravery and sacrifice, and the debt owed to men like Mark Bellamy. But at the end, he tells the truth. "Mark once told me," Tony says, his voice breaking slightly, "that it wasn't the plane that brought him home that day. It was remembering that someone was waiting for him on the other side of the channel. His sister, his family, the life he hadn't finished living yet." He looks at Claire, at Helen, at the crowd gathered to remember. That's what kept him flying when the plane was dying. Not duty, not heroism, love. The refusal to let the people who loved him grieve. Tony pauses. He said the rest was just not giving up on seeing that embrace again. And he never did. Years later, in 2015, the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum creates an exhibition on tactical innovation in World War II. A small section is dedicated to Mark Bellamy and the concept of compensatory flying, using damage as advantage, turning weakness into strength. There's a photo of him in his flight suit, young and serious, standing beside the battered remains of the Bluegrass Angel. There's a description of the 5 kills, the impossible survival, the return home. But the centerpiece of the exhibit is one of Claire's paintings, the one showing the damaged Mustang climbing toward the light, and below it, a placard with Mark's own words, taken from an interview he gave late in life. "People ask me how I survived that day. They want tactics, technique, some secret they can learn. But the truth is simpler than that. I survived because I had a reason to, because somewhere across that channel, my little sister was waiting for me to teach her to fly. And I wasn't going to let a few bullet holes stop me from keeping that promise. That's all it was. A promise. The rest was just flying. The boy from Kentucky, who turned a dying plane into a weapon. The pilot who shot down 5 enemies with a Mustang that shouldn't have been in the air. The instructor who taught a generation that survival is a choice you make, moment by moment, until you find yourself home again. Marcus Bellamy didn't change the war, but he changed the way people thought about surviving it. And maybe, in the end, that was enough.